Welcome back to another episode of RecTalk, UK's #1 recruitment podcast by a variety of different metrics. Just look them up. I'm your host, Nitin Sharma, founder of RecTools.io. RecTools, as you know by now, is the only whole-of-market directory for all the supply chain into your recruitment business. So if you're trying to build and grow and sustain a thriving recruitment business, get onto RecTools.io, find yourself a new CRM provider, maybe find yourself a new timesheet software, maybe even look at your invoice financing needs and your payroll needs and make sure you've got the right suppliers in. Maybe you might venture over to our consultancies page where you'll see a whole range of different consultants that provide a variety of different services that can benefit the growth of your business. Which brings me to my guest very nicely. See a little segue there. Almost like a pro at this now. Almost. You'll know her from LinkedIn. You'll know her from... I forgot the name of the business already because you are not openly trading. I say openly, but you'll know her from Bright Light Performance and specialising in not building. You said creating, didn't you?
Yep, creating.
I said I was a pro at this, and now I've kind of all unravelled. Creating thriving workplaces. I was going to say businesses. See, this is the point in this episode, right? So the languages that you use in this pre-chat that we've had is so different to the commercial focused sales business language that I'm used to, that it is a mind shift change. And I'm sitting there like, actually, yeah, you got to think of that. And I threw the word thrive in there. But anyway, my guest today is Soreya Senior. Soreya, first of all, thank you so much for making the journey over.
Thank you for having me.
Looking forward to this chat. So we're going to talk today about, we know there's a paradigm shift happening in the recruitment sector. You are a HR consultant that works with recruitment business owners who want to sort of further develop their proposition in terms of employee culture, their business, and to create that thriving workplace environment. So I'm going to pick your brains on kind of what's going on out there at the minute, because there's a lot of business owners that listen to this who know what's going on in their own business, but don't understand whether that is against the grain, with the grain, for the grain. You know, they don't know what the rest of them are going through.
Yeah.
And so it might give some peace of mind. It might give some people some ideas. So first of all, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to shut up now and throw the ball over to your court, and you can just run with this now. So what's going on out there? There's a shift.
There is.
Let's talk about that shift first.
So I think the shift is that people are realising that, you know, you have to evolve your business. The talent landscape has changed. You know, you're providing a service into a new talent landscape, but actually your talent landscape for recruiters has changed. It's a different generation of workers, of employees that are coming in, and it's thinking about, you know, those traditional ways of how you used to work. They're maybe not fit for purpose anymore. It's easy for me to say. And, you know, how are you adapting to that workforce? How are you engaging them? How are you kind of building that thriving team?
So the overwhelming complaint from recruitment businesses that I speak to is that this new crop are lazy, right? Which I completely disagree with and think is unfair. But I hear that a lot. Oh, this new generation, they're just lazy. They don't know how good they've got it. Now, is this a case that it's that, you know, that sort of perpetual cycle of, you know, tough times creating tough people creating easy times, and easy times creating easy people? You know, is it that, or is it the fact that actually recruitment is no longer a sales business, or should no longer be a sales business, because actually the people working within the recruitment sector don't want to work in the sales business. They want to work for a consultancy and they want to make a difference, because social impact is more important to this crop of generation of people than chasing the bag.
So every generation has its pocket of lazy people. But I think society has shifted. And I think, you know, post-pandemic, we're nearly 5 years post that point in time, half a decade, right? That's a big chunk of time. And I think that awareness around what good looks like for an individual, of how they want to show up at work, you know, that social impact, you know, people having a bit more of a conscience, that means that people are taking more ownership and responsibility and accountability for how they want to work, and having that balance, and how they don't want to just survive anymore, they want to thrive.
Yeah.
And that comes with a level of balance and what may be perceived as resistance to the older narrative and way of working. So do I think it's lazy? No, I think people want to do good work. I think they want to be developed. I think they want to be compensated well, but they also want to have a life outside of work. And
I mean,
they
that
maybe don't
seems
want
reasonable,
to be.
right?
I don't. I mean, look, I've been doing this for 30 odd years. They're all the things that I want as well. So I don't think it's unreasonable.
Is it? Do you think that the journey or the path is different now? So you
Completely.
say between sort of thrive and survive. The things that sort of our generation did to thrive don't seem to provide the same results for this generation.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like,
who do we all really want to work hard, play hard? You know, what does that even mean anymore?
That's it.
I think it's all about balance and blend these days, right? It's that flexibility. It will never be, the balance will never tip equally. We know
No.
that, right? That's just a fact. The balance doesn't tip equally,
No.
but it is a blend. And I think because there was such a hard stop of where we had to stop and think, readjust, reset, you know, whatever all the R's are around that, you know, I think it was just too a hard stop to adjust, and people just thought we can just go back to what it was. But there is no going back. Society has changed, the world of work has changed, and it needs to keep moving forward. And also, if, you know, recruitment companies want to keep moving forward, they've got to acknowledge that within their own businesses. Otherwise, they won't be able to service their clients in a meaningful way. If their own business, you know, it's almost a bit physician heal thyself. How can you consult and support your partners and your clients about their world of work and the environments they're building if you're not doing the same? You've kind of got to, you know, use that marketing phrase of eat your own dog food, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point, isn't it? Yeah. Because our clients are entrusting us as recruitment businesses to find them the best talent.
Absolutely.
And how do we do that when we can't even do it for ourselves, but we're not learning the employment landscape and kind of what people want now?
Because we look to recruiters sometimes as thought leaders, whether it's around data, around.
Well, they should be, yeah.
You need to be thought leaders around that. So how can
and a lot of them are, and the ones that are thriving at the minute. You talk
as a
about
thought
thriving,
leaders,
they're the ones that are doing that, right? They're either platforming, you know, other specialists and other people and giving them a voice and researching for them or whatever. But yeah, they're acting as that conduit between the two.
Yeah.
But we have access to all this information, or we have access to people who can provide us this data and information. Tell us what you want and we'll go and find it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, you know, as an HR professional, I know that I've leaned on my recruitment partners in the past to go, oh, have you got this data, or do you know someone that could?
Yeah.
You know, especially when, you know, my background is startups and scale-ups, you know, in a very, you know, it has been sort of biotech tech over the years. And you sort of go, I've got to build this team, and actually, where do I get this expert knowledge? And so you're relying on your really trusted recruitment partner to kind of help you and think about that and be a thought leader, because, you know, believe it or not, HR people can't do everything and don't know everything. Shocker. Spoiler alert out there for you. But I think, you know, I've relied a lot on my recruitment partners in the past to kind of do that thought leadership, to be that confidant. So actually, do your own businesses reflect that?
So who's approached that though? Have you gone to your recruitment partners and said, hey, I need this information? Or has it been that they volunteered that information to you and said, listen, we could do this for you if you need it?
I think as the relationship's built, it's kind of gone, look, this is what I need. Or with one recruitment partner who I worked with for many, many years, I sort of went to them and gone, actually, can you do this embedded solution for me? What I need is, here's the roles. I need an EVP built. I want to think of a different way to kind of get candidates under my managers' noses and my managers engaged in a recruitment process, because, again, spoiler alert, managers are the biggest blocker to a good recruitment process. You've got access to my managers, help me understand what's go in and be a bit of their therapist to find out what's going on, and have kind of given them that kind of outsourced talent acquisition strategic partnership role. And, you know, then you go, okay, this worked last time when I was in this business. Do you want to come back and do it, 2.0? Everything from, video recorded kind of, I don't love CVs. They're dated and they don't really tell me about the candidate. I'm probably only going to take it into an interview to remember somebody's name. Give me something short, sharp, so that I can make this candidate memorable. And so just doing loads of kind of iterations around that. What's going to get a manager engaged? And, you know, and then they've come back with other ideas going, hey, would you experiment with this? And I'm like, sure, let's give it, what's the worst that could happen?
I like that. Which the interesting thing is, I've said this multiple times on this podcast around recruitment businesses need to shift their focus, and they need to, you know, the way they need to be operating with their HR counterparts and talent acquisition counterparts is by, you know, trying to partner up on things that they need help and support with. And that was off the back of a panel discussion that I did at RecFest with TA professionals going, that's what we want. We don't want you ringing us when there's a vacancy and they're not bothering with us. We don't want you specking to our line managers. All these things that you know we don't want you doing, you do.
Yeah.
Because it gives you that immediate, you know, chase the bag mentality.
Yeah.
And what you're doing is you're effectively kind of ruining your chances of ever building a relationship with us, because in the back of our mind it will never be these people genuinely want to have an embedded relationship with us and lead to that point where you can go, I know the agency and I know them well enough to be able to give them full access to everything. Guys, can we agree an amount and then you guys take this bit of recruitment out of my hands, right? You'll never get to that point because that trust will never build, because you've always operated in that manner of, yeah, listen, I'm just here to get paid.
Yeah.
I want to fire an invoice and I just want to get out of it and do it to the next person, you know. So actually hearing that and further validated is really good, I think, for a lot of the business owners that listen to this, because there are a handful that are doing it really well.
Yeah.
You know, like exceptionally well. And I'm going to shout out Mixos Group, who I was at an event for this week. You know, a room of 80 to 85 talent acquisition and HR professionals who want to understand how to use AI in their business more effectively. And they've gone, okay, well, here's a business in Milton Keynes that do that. Let's get them to talk to you about what it is and all the kind of the 101 of AI, show you their product so that you've got something that you can go back to and go, we might have something here. And then they put me on a panel with sort of three of the people and went, open floor, ask whatever you want, you know. And the questions were all weird and wonderful stuff, but every single person I spoke to after that was like, this was a great event. This was fantastic. This was so useful for us. I'm concerned. I was worried. I didn't understand. I didn't think of it that way, you know. And they picked up, you know, tangible revenue off the back of that event, you know. I know they picked up retained work, and I know they picked up a handful of vacancies. You know, so it was sort of like they'd still got the, you know, the sort of the financial reward off the back of it. But what they actually did was provide a whole range of HR and TA professionals with a bunch of insight that they were begging for, but just didn't know who to go to for it.
Absolutely. And I think that thought leadership is really, really important, especially around culture, especially around skills development. I think, you know, I really hate the phrase soft skills, because there's nothing soft about those skills. They're actual life skills that you don't just need. You know, we always say, oh, you know, this person was poor at communicating and, you know, they're not good at building relationships. Guess what? You don't just need that in the workplace. You need that to get through life in general. So, you know, how are you building those skills that build trust with your client? You know, because I do a lot around how do you build a high-performing team? Well, you and I both know that the foundation for a high-performing team is good communication, and good communication is built on trust. And so, you know, what you know, with trust comes credibility. And actually what makes you credible is not, you know, going against the rules that, you know, the guidelines, not the rules, the guidelines that kind of, you know, HR have set out for you. You know, just go, well, look, I've got this CV, this candidate. You might not have a vacancy now, but it might just be good to, you know, because I like thinking about talent and giving people opportunities. The businesses that I work with move at such a pace, you don't know who you might need. You know, you might need some really good utility players out there in your team, you know, not just such a niche individual and niche skill set. And, you know, sometimes you just see a CV or an individual and you're like, oh, actually.
We might be able to make this work.
And so, you know, but it's going, look, work with the guidelines. Let's build that trust.
Me saying as a talent acquisition professional or HR professional, keep me abreast of any decent candidates that are in the market. That is not a green light for you to start hammering me on a mail shot.
I mean, don't
with
spray
every
and pray.
Tom, Dick and Harry that you ever register that week. But this is what some people hear. You know, this is what some agencies are doing. And then you kind of like, you know, put the the sort of the email ramifications to a side, with you ending up in everyone's junk box because you've done that, put that to a side for a minute. There's no credibility there. You know? If I'm saying to you, okay, like, sorry, you mentioned this, and this. I've got somebody in mind. Let me go and sense check it with her, see if she's interested in an opportunity with you guys. Just have a coffee with her. And I'll position it as that as well. It was just a coffee with a business that you may want to do some work for in the future, right? And I know you're in a contract at the minute, or I know you're working at the moment, and you know things change, times change, people change. Same thing applies to them. That's a far more effective way of kind of hedging your bets. If you want to put it back into a recruitment mindset of why have you done that for? Well, actually, the more candidates I can have in somewhat semi-conversational processes with a multitude of a multitude of potential clients, the more likely something is to come off.
It completely works.
Rather than be like, I'm going to send this one candidate to 5,000 people.
I mean, you know, there's an amazing recruiter out there, Katie Barber, shout out at CT19. You know, we've just built a really great relationship. You know, I'd gone back, you know, we talked about a role, but, you know, it's been built more into a bit of a thought partner, you know, with each other. And she'll just go, I think I just need to connect you with this person. Or I'll do the same thing. I was like, oh, Katie, I don't know if this person's looking, but actually, can I connect you with this candidate? They might be somebody for you down the line. So in some ways, I become a bit of a resourcer for recruiters. But I think
what a better advocation for when and again, we don't look at it this way because we're so in the weeds sometimes and focused on revenue. But when you've got your candidate base or your client base referring you people, that is the biggest advocation for your skill set. Whatever you're doing is working.
Yeah.
Right. But then this comes back to that survive or thrive mentality. Yeah. If all you're caring about is the revenue that month and that week and, you know, your target, you are destined to just survive.
Yeah.
You're turning away from the thrive, right? Because I used to have it, right? We ran a recruitment agency that went from being incredibly profitable and doing really well to literally worrying about paying, you know, the bills to keep the doors open. And it went from when clients and candidates would say, oh, hey, this is a mate of mine, or this is a cousin of mine, or this is a family member of mine, can you look after them? And us being like, oh, that's really nice. To just like, I ain't got fucking nothing for them. Just, no, I've got nothing for them. Because you're so busy just trying to survive that you don't then focus on the thrive element of, this is great. We've got, I don't need to spend X amount on job boards and this and this and this. I've got my networking for me. That's how good of a job I'm doing.
And I think, you know, that's a better way for individuals to thrive as well, right? Because you're making that human connection, you're building those skills because the trust is built. You know, you're communicating about a candidate in a bit more of a meaningful way. You're talking about, you know, the opportunities in a more meaningful way, and, you know, how you can support a business it becomes more consultative and relationship built. You know, and I think, you know, that's when you start to thrive as an individual, because whilst I've never worked in an agency as a biller or recruiter, I've done obviously the internal bit, you know, on the other side, but I also worked as a fee earner in a business as a consultant where, you know, those contracted 7 hours a day were all billable. Yeah. And then you had to do all the business development on top of it. And you're just like, literally shoot me in the head. Now I cannot do this. This doesn't, I mean, being believe it or not, massive introvert, it doesn't, you know, support, my need to know where the exit is at any given moment when I have to go to sort of excruciating events. And, you know, you just sort of go, no, I'm not thriving in this. Whereas when I just went, hey, let's just have a chat, you know, guess what? It starts flowing, and you can be more authentic in how you earn your revenue.
Exactly, right? And you do business with the people that you want to be working alongside and with, rather than just anyone who's willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Because, again, I've said this a few times on the podcast, but most people I speak to say that their business, and the majority of their business, comes from referral and recommendation. That's where the majority of their revenue has come from over the last 18 months at least. And I'm sort of like, that's where we should be really positioning our consultants, right? To go out and do that. Because, you know, I had a conversation with, he's an agency business owner, and he was kind of like, you know, he's still working to the old call time targets and stuff. They need to be on the phone at least 3 hours a day. They need to be. And I kind of broke it all down and was sort of like, look, in reality, in real life, outside of work, in our real lives, you don't answer the phone to numbers that you don't recognise, and you don't listen to your voicemails. Why are you telling your staff to do that?
Yeah.
Right? In the real world, if I said to you, in fact, I was like, you use my mortgage broker. Dan didn't have to sell himself to you.
Yeah.
You said, I'm looking for da da da, and I'm struggling to figure out the mortgage side of things. And I said to you, speak to my mate Dan. He's really, really good, and I recommend him to all my family and all my friends, and they've all had mortgages off him. He's great, and you just went along with it. You didn't put him through any process of no, we need to meet for. It was just, well, if Nathan says you're good, I'm gonna use you, right?
Can you pass me his details after the podcast?
Absolutely, he's brilliant. But the point was, I was like, in the real world, we operate in a particular way. But then in business, for some reason, in our industry specifically, we seem to just not want to accept that. And there's just numerous examples. We're sat here now because a mutual connection in Scott went, hey, you two should probably speak. There's something there. Like, I don't know what it is. It's between you guys to figure it out. But like, I think you're like this person and this person's got a lot of value to add to your platform. Get in touch. And I love the thought process that there are, and the idea that there's people like yourself out there who are working with recruitment business owners to kind of be like, just let's stop this madness, and let's kind of reposition your business because, hey, I've worked on the other side of the businesses that you're trying to approach and trying to attract. Like I said to this guy, this particular business owner, I was like, they're all in Slack groups together and WhatsApp groups together. And he was like, what? They're all in groups together. If you are the absolute best at what you do, or you do something that really stands out, and they're not going to buy from you for whatever reason, hiring freeze, not hiring, the minute somebody says, does anybody know a good X type of recruiter or X type of business, they will recommend you if you do a good job.
Yeah.
But that's it, if you do that good job. If all you're ever doing is ringing them, leaving them voicemails, and then going, I emailed, and then I'll follow up an email, and then I'll do this, and then I'll do that. You're badgering them. You're not giving them any value. You're never going to get, you'll never make it into that Slack group or that WhatsApp group as a recommendation, ever.
And, if there's any reality that I'm seeing at the moment is how recruiters treat HR professionals or any professional when they're in the market. Guess what? Don't ring them up when they get their new role. Like, we remember stuff. Yeah. But I think that, that kind of stigma aside, I think, you need to think about the culture of your business, because that drives behaviours.
Yes.
Right. And we know what the traditional recruitment behaviours were, but, what is in culture isn't this nebulous thing. It is something you can touch and you can feel, and it is experienced in a very, very real way. And that, culture drives behaviours. It's driven, it's developed through your values.
Yeah.
And, it's not a poster on a wall. And I think, people will, we talk about EVPs all the time, but what is that actual lived experience of the recruiter versus what you're saying it is on your shiny TikToks, which is apparently where all the young people hang out.
They do.
Apparently. But, it's not what it says on social media. It's that real lived experience. Yes. Yeah. And I think it's really, really important to think about that as, agency owners and leaders. People will follow your example. Gone are the days when it's, do as I say. It isn't that hierarchical top down. It's more of that grassroots ground up way of doing things.
Where do you think that mindset's developed from?
I think it's people having that self-awareness and having that ability to create balance through the pandemic. Honestly, I think there was that real shift around people going, I can still do a good job and be at home without doing a commute for 1 million hours a week. I don't have to have this lifestyle where I'm out all hours and doing X, Y, and Z. I can still provide value and do the work that I need to do and earn my living, but in a slightly more meaningful way that creates space for me to think and live and breathe. And, the pandemic wasn't an ideal environment for that, but I think off the back of it came this ownership of your life.
A lot of people got off the treadmill, didn't they? And they just sort of like, okay, this is different.
Yeah, but I can still do what I need to do. Yeah. I can still add value to my clients because actually I haven't come in harassed. from
Yeah.
a 2-hour commute. I'm feeling fairly refreshed, and engaged for my day.
Yeah.
And nobody had the optimum living and working experience. Like nobody did.
No.
Unless you had, housekeeping staff, which I certainly didn't. I was in the office shed at the end of the garden for 2 years. But, I think people suddenly created an awareness around going, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why do I need to do this? And that thing of, coming back to your desk from, 9 till 6, you don't need to do that to be productive.
No.
And, what is the definition of productive? It's about, at the end of the day, it'll always be about your bottom line, your recurring revenue.
But you must get this question, though, from recruitment business owners, right? Who are like, well, how do I train newbies then? How do I train, sometimes being in the office around the more experienced billers, rubs off on people, and that mindset rubs off on people.
100% does.
So
I think again, it's about balance and flexibility. I think in those early stages, that's why we have probation periods, and they can be a good thing. They are a source of good, as opposed to if it doesn't work, off your pop. But think about, what does that meaningful onboarding look like? What are the things that you value? Again, it goes back to those values and behaviours. So what behaviours do you need to drive? And think about that in a really meaningful way. It's not just about get your CRM, do
then
your
that pulls in
networking.
the culture piece again, which
it's
is
so
kind of like, as a
important.
business, we have a high performing culture.
Yeah.
You get the freedom to, work remotely as an example.
Yeah.
But the expectation is that you're at a peak performance at the majority of your day.
Yeah. And being really clear about the goals. Stop moving goalposts on people. Yeah, you have to adjust, right? We all have to do that. But I think it's thinking about, be really clear on the goals. What does good look like for your business? And then build that really into those early days of that onboarding process. And that, that works in any business, not just in the organisations I've been in. It works in recruitment. Be really clear about giving people feedback around what's working, what's not working. Go and get that 360 feedback from the client. What worked well with your interaction with that person. When you've got that good trusted relationship with your TA, professional or HR person, they will be open about that feedback.
Yeah.
I just don't think you can get anywhere in life without feedback. And, you've got to be able to go out there to the clients, not just ask for your Google review and with the aim of getting a 5-star review. That doesn't really work.
That comes entirely down to sort of positioning and why you're asking for the feedback, right?
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. There's nothing more important in business than feedback, if you give a shit about it.
Yeah.
If all you want is that 5-star review, that because you want to show it off to other people, well, that's not feedback.
But it's also not sustainable for your talent or for you as a business.
No.
And I think, again, it's, when you think about those skills, that it's about, if you want to be sustainable, people will thrive. You can't really have one without the other. We all want sustainable businesses, but how do you do that? Well, people need space to thrive. So actually they need, we talk about a lot around the 8 dimensions of well-being. A lot of that comes into purpose. Clarity of goals come into that. What's the environment that you're working in? What's the social interaction? How do you build your team? So it's not just about that social interaction is really important, whether that's team building, team lunches, but also how you're thinking about what the nuances are of the team. We talk about culture add, not culture fit. That all leads into people's well-being and thriving in the workplace. What does diversity actually mean? Well, actually, don't worry too much about the diversity bit. Think about the equity and belonging and inclusion in your business.
Right.
And then by default, you will get diversity within your organisation. But how are you going to support that and nurture it? It's not just talent's not a binary thing anymore, and it shouldn't be in recruitment businesses. And I think it's just going, there's a different way. It's scary. We're going to have to be a bit vulnerable in how we think about this, but it genuinely really does start with culture.
But if we're completely honest with ourselves, what we're currently doing isn't working, so why not take the risk to go?
What is there to lose?
Yeah.
There's this great book by Frederick Laloux called Reinventing Organisations. I really recommend it as a read. It's not a business book or manual. It's just an opportunity to go, there's a different way.
Yeah.
You know, the work, it's thinking about not just job descriptions, but what's the work that needs to get done. So therefore people will have different roles and their roles will be layered. And it's going, you know, as society has changed, work has changed. You know, we talk about the Ford era, which was, 1922, so 100 years ago. It was very command and control. We talk about red organisations. You know, the 9 to 5 suited that time period.
Yes. Yeah.
9 to 5 doesn't work now. And, you know, as life has transitioned and changed and society has changed, we're talking more about teal organisations, self-managed teams, distributed leadership, self-management, because people want more autonomy, not to work in a silo, but they want autonomy over their work.
Yeah.
You know, they want to work, like, talk about that social impact, so it's purpose.
Yeah.
And, you know, whole self, well, actually, how do I show up as my authentic self so that enables me to thrive? Because you and I spoke about it earlier. Comes a point in your career where it's like, I can't wear that mask anymore. It's not working for me. It's exhausting. I'm not doing meaningful work. I'm not doing the work where I'm thriving.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, thinking about that, and so how do I build that culture? Well, that's driven again by behaviours, and behaviours are your values. So what behaviours, or what do you want to be known as, Nitin? You know, what are your personal values? How do they show up? Because they'll either show up as a value or an unmet need. So you get frustrated because it's an unmet need. Why aren't my teams, you know, engaged? Why aren't they communicating with me? You know, why can't I communicate with them? There's, you know, something's not working. There's a disconnect, and that's an unmet need in you because a value that you have is not showing up in the right way. Therefore, when you flip it into a positive, you know, and that's where you get performance issues, because there's actually an unmet need going on here. And actually, when you kind of break it down, it's not necessarily a big aha moment for anybody, but it's sort of going,
it's enough of a aha moment for me, like, right, there's
a behaviour is being driven by a value.
Yeah.
And it's not showing up in the positive way that I need it to. So therefore we're getting a performance issue or a capability issue. And what is that? You know, it can't just be about the numbers anymore.
Yeah. Oh no. That's so there's so much there that's insightful and valuable. And so let's talk about kind of the concept of, as a business owner, going through the realization that, like, okay, I need to do something, right? Give us some case studies of businesses that you've kind of gone in and gone, okay, this is what they were doing, this is what the frustrations were, and this was the advice that I gave. Just for the people that might go, shit, that's me.
Well, I think it's, why have you got this revolving door of recruiters? So when I worked with a business, there was just this revolving door, you know, and it's like, oh, they're performing, we've got to get rid of them. And it was just like that. And it happens across the recruitment landscape, you know that.
Does. Yeah.
You've had a quarter of poor performance.
I was guilty for it.
Quarter of poor performance, can't consistently have that.
Yeah.
So look, it's you, not me.
Yeah.
Off your pop. Whereas actually the team that I was working with, they were so embedded and partnered with the culture of the business that I was building and working with. They were like, hang on a minute, I think we need to have a chat. So the CEO, the founder, he's like, I think we need to talk. And I was like, okay, so what's going on? And it was, just that really, really open conversation. I'm like, honestly, it starts with how you're leading.
Yeah.
Like this is, you need to develop your leadership skills. You're frustrated because of your values. Like, it's getting to the point where you're so frustrated you can't make good decisions.
Yeah.
It's really blurring your judgment
It's coming out outwardly now rather than,
Absolutely. So have you got a fit for purpose leadership team that's actually giving the teams the time? Because we know people aren't so comfortable on the phones. They're happier around a WhatsApp or a Slack message or whatever. But, it's sort of going, okay, so how are you communicating? Because if you're only communicating in a frustrated way, you're going to lose your audience. We know that.
Yeah.
So let's do some leadership development.
Yeah.
And so it really started at the top, which is where it needs to start every time. You cannot build a culture. It will happen organically. You can't stop that. And it should happen organically in some ways. But actually, you have to do it in a very intended way. Otherwise, your culture gets out of control really quickly. And that's where you get all the poor performance from, actually, and the lack of engagement. So actually, it's that self-management thing again. the first rule of Leadership Club is self-awareness. So if you're not aware of your own values and what drives you and what you value in others, you've got nothing really.
Yeah, because actually you might be going through a paradigm shift yourself in what you on your own why and your own purpose and what you were motivated by. And until you've got a clear notion and understanding of that, you can't lead a bunch of people who look to you for the answers. And if you haven't got the answers for yourself, how are you going to,
It's about creating that vision, that purpose, and it's the same with any purpose. That every business will have a purpose.
Yeah.
Right. And it might have dual layered purposes, but you've got to define that. And you've got to understand who you are as a leader. And nobody's the finished article as a leader.
No.
But you have to have some self-awareness around that, because people will either absorb your behaviours or they'll mirror them or they will completely act up against them and push back against your leadership style, which creates chaos. You lose focus. You don't have a high-performing team at that point, and therefore you really have no business. So I think it's having... and that feels to a lot of people like, oh God, that's just a drain on my time. But actually, it's better to do that because it will create sustainability for you than to have this constant churn, because that in turn creates a reputation. And you cannot, unless you do something drastic again, you can't dial that reputation back.
No, that's very true. That's very true. I've loved this. This has been so insightful. And I think there's so much more to discuss, but we're getting really short on time. So first of all, how do people reach out to you and kind of engage with you and that kind of thing? What is the process of your decision making of like whether or not you work with the client? And then sort of, what tips have you got for recruitment business owners before they meet you to kind of assess themselves and say, do you know what? Yeah, I think I'm ready. You know what I mean?
So reach out to me on LinkedIn, Soreya Senior. On LinkedIn, I think I'm the only one there, so easy to find. And I think the first bit is it's really hard to be honest with ourselves, but go and hold the mirror up and go, what's not working?
Yeah.
And we can help you find your why it's not working. But I think it's like with any problem, you've got to acknowledge there's a problem yourself first.
Yeah.
And then
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. You got to decide whether are you currently surviving or are you currently thriving?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And if you genuinely feel like you're thriving, then great, they don't need you.
Yeah.
But if they feel like they're just surviving, then there's a clear need there.
And especially as a leader, if you feel you are not thriving as a leader, then that's probably having an impact on the rest of your team.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not, the business and the leader are not mutually exclusive to one another, right?
Completely.
Yeah. Excellent. Look, I've really, really enjoyed this. Genuinely, thoroughly enjoyed this. I'd love to have you back again in the future, and we'll go into a bit more detail. But yeah, look, we shall kind of pick up again off camera as to sort of next steps and stuff. But that's it for another episode of RecTalk. New episodes drop every Wednesday. Thank you for liking, subscribing, sharing, and doing all the cool shit that you guys do that keeps us growing in the way that we do. Thank you very much. We'll see you again next time. Mate, honestly, thank you. That's been really good.
Thank you for having me. I was so nervous.
Yeah, you did really good.
Oh,
really
thank
good.
you.
Oh. Right.